My name is Max. I'm also a software engineer, but probably I'm the only one today on stage that's not going to try to show you code or sell you a product or something like this. I'm the founder of a non-profit organization for 5 years now, working on digital sustainability. We have one program, that's this one, called S12Y. For all the very smart people who know accessibility, you might understand why we did it like this, where we talk about sustainable software. And yeah, like I said, I'm a software engineer. My name is Max. I'm German. If you want more accent, you can just tell me. I can make the German accent much more pronounced. Because I think, you know, you really like the German accent. It's very funny. Anyways, so I can dial that in if you want. I have 2 children. I live in the Netherlands. I used to live in Barcelona as well. And I'm very happy to be here to do this talk with you. I will try a little bit with humor, because some of this stuff is a bit hardcore. So I hope you get to laugh a bit. Oh, sorry. First one. Talk about something else. Sustainability, climate change, all this stuff, it's fundamentally about values. It's what you value. Values are things that we can't accomplish. You know, you might value efficiency, for example. Efficiency is not something that is ever going to be finished. You can push it to boundaries. Sustainability is the same. Sustainability is something that I value. Climate change is a fact. You don't have to believe in it, but you definitely don't have to believe in it to work in sustainability. Because sustainability is really about how can I make something or build something that balances the needs of the environment, economics, and society, and puts it in balance. It's fundamentally about balance. And often people get really rallied up about climate change. You don't have to believe in that fact if you want to work on sustainability. Everybody gets to work on that if you value sustainability. That's the way I like to look at it. Now, to the nerd stuff, I use this word a lot because I'm too lazy to always use these 3 words. I call this a digital resource. It's what comes out of this device. So I need you to, when I say these words, remember this is a laptop. The laptop takes energy right now out of its battery and a lot of metals and rare earths to turn energy into compute storage and memory. Compute storage and network capacity, sorry. Or in other words, the ability to process data, store data, and transport data. That's what a computer does, fundamentally. So that's what I call a digital resource. And a lot of you here build software. So software is really about, or I like to refer to it more as digital products. It's about assembly multiplied by resources multiplied by audience. What I mean by that is there is a way how you build something. Take a car. You can manufacture a car in a certain way with a certain engine. That engine consumes a certain amount of resources. And then if 1 billion people are driving that car, that's your audience. That's the scale factor of the impact of the car. So if you make your assembly more efficient in that example and 1 billion people are using it, then the multiplication effect of even 1% improvement is huge, right? That's, in a way, what I want to talk to you about today. It's about this, the assembly and the resources. If you have a digital product, for example, Instagram, yeah? A good example. I don't want to have the debate with you of, is it useful what it does? Because that's a very philosophical, values-driven decision. If a digital product is useful or not, that's up to the people that use it. But there's something that, as the discipline of software engineering, what we can affect is really how did we make the product and how many resources does the product need when it's being used. That's our responsibility, and that's also in our power. This we can affect. The first part, again, very philosophical, but these 2 parts, doesn't matter how you drive the car, we can still make the car better. Yeah? Now the sad part, no, kidding. Now the part that I need to use a bit of humor. So I really like the sentence, is a bit like medicine. Software has side effects. And the first side effect is that the resources that we put in to our digital products to run them, they have an environmental impact. Right? That's a good one to not forget. To put it into perspective, last year the European Union threw away electronic waste that weighs the same amount in 1 year than the entire Chinese wall. Yeah? And this is a lot of times driven by the fact, oh, the firmware is expired, or the software needs now more resources, so I got to upgrade my computer. And this leads to trash that today, this cannot be recycled or recovered. Doesn't matter what somebody tells you, we cannot extract the gold and platinum and all these metals back out of these platines. Here's a good picture. We actually, it's always resolution. We disassembled the server just that you can see it a bit. There is about more than 1,000 components in a server, and unfortunately, none of them are wood, paper, or materials that you can somehow reuse and refurbish. Here's another good overview. I find this really funny because the Canadian mining industry uses this to show just how much mining is necessary to make an iPhone. And it gives you an idea, like some of these rare earths, also neodymium, boron, nickel, they're very hard to get, and we don't actually have that much on this planet. There is a physical limitation to how much is there. And in a way, what we want to do is, if we're extracting these minerals from the earth, we want to use them as long as possible. Right? We don't want to put them into something that after 3 years, we're going to throw away anyways again. And just that you know, we cannot, for 95% of these metals, we cannot recover them. Once they're in a device, it's very difficult to get them back out, because sometimes it's just 4 grams mixed into some other blend, and it's very, very difficult to get them out. I did not show you, I could show you a picture with children in the mine, but I'm not doing that. But just keep in mind that the mining that happens to get all this stuff doesn't happen outside of Barcelona. It doesn't really happen in our sphere. A lot of it does happen in Sweden, for example, but a lot of these minerals are extracted in countries where it's not, let's say it's not sustainable to do it like this for a long time, just so that we can have relatively cheap devices. So mining is another issue. Now, I'm going to shame a bit, because when you're in an NGO, you get to do one thing that most companies can't do. I can shame other companies on stage. Which company do you think built a data center in the fucking desert? Meta, of course. Does that sound intelligent to you, like to build a data center in the desert? No, it doesn't. There's a lot of reasons why they do it like this. But the most annoying part about this is that at very high temperatures, which is very common in the desert, these data centers use evaporative cooling, which essentially means they're spraying water with a garden hose into the cooling tower to reduce energy cost. And the water comes out of a river nearby, which is also the drinking water of the citizens. I think in Barcelona now you're very sensitive to this. And in the US you have something called water rights. And this data center gets water above humans. So don't worry, Facebook will be online, Instagram will be working, WhatsApp will be working, but people are going to not have drinking water. Because, and we're talking here about billions of gallons of water. This is like a very, very large facility. And why is it in the desert? Of course, tax incentives. Somebody gave them the incentive to build it there. We should not do this. Another one, do you notice the white boxes? They're not warehouses, unfortunately. They're data centers. There is these 2 little circles. I don't have a laser pointer at the very top there. That's a power plant, just to give you a sense of perspective. All the white boxes around it are data centers. This entire town outside of London is essentially covered with data center facilities. Because when we build software, and again, I'm a software engineer, we often forget the scale of infrastructure that's sitting behind a lot of the stuff that we use every day. Because again, it's not built in front of your house. It's not like a wind turbine that you can complain about, but it's often in the middle of nowhere or in the desert. But we just have to be aware that there is an infrastructure necessary to power what we build. And the last one, that's a bit also of a myth that keeps getting pushed, is chips are not really getting faster. There is a limit at 3 nanometers of how small you can actually make a chip. And what you're seeing now with the glorious NVIDIAs of these worlds, is just really look at the size of these GPUs and chips. They're just getting bigger. All they're doing is putting more transistors on a larger surface, and that has one very bad side effect. It uses even more energy and generates even more heat, which is why a DGX is such a pain in the ass to cool. It's 6,500 watts of heat coming out. Yeah, that's you could put 1,500 toasters in a room, and that's the heat it generates. Yeah, just gives you an idea. They're just making them bigger at this point. Now about you, software people. Choices. Choices are important. This one is just for laughing. I know lines of code is not a good metric to measure anything, but I do want you to watch the correlation between those two slides. Yeah? Lines of code in Windows versions over the years, amount of resources required to run Windows. I'm not sure. I don't know if you see a correlation. I'm not sure. Do you see it? Yeah, okay. So you can make certain choices, right? You can build things in a certain way, and of course you can make choices also about what legacy you're always pulling along. But my message here is really, we also have to clean up what we built before, right? I worked in tech, and it was always, oh, let's build something new again. Let's build another thing. Let's build another thing. Okay, but what happened with the database I built 10 years ago? Oh, that's still running. Is somebody still using it? No? Okay. Maybe we could remove that. The same one about this one. How many of you here have a blog? Raise your hand. Okay. Is it worth it? Okay. Just, especially if it's running on a WordPress site, keep in mind that there is a server running 24/7, even though nobody's visiting the blog. You know, maybe you have thousands of visitors, that's different. But for example, my mother used to have a cooking blog, and that didn't have a lot of visitors. And I shut it down because I thought, like, it's not worth running a server 24/7 to serve this WordPress site. It really is not. And this applies to any application. If it has less than 10 users and it needs 10 VMs to run, can we please turn it off? Just for me. If you don't want to do it for anyone else, just do it for me. Another one. This is, in all engineering disciplines, you hear the word, oh, we just make it more efficient. Be very careful. Efficiency gains always trigger Jevons paradox or the rebound effect, which is what happened to cars. And this is quite funny, actually. So you make anything more efficient, it will always lead to more consumption. Always. So whatever efficiency gains you make will be circumvented by just higher consumption. Think about video streaming. Yes, we used to have a TV, now we have Netflix. What has happened? What really has happened? People are watching more streams than ever before. So yes, the cost per stream is lower, but the amount of streaming happening in total is significantly higher. The same has happened with cloud. Cloud made digital resources so accessible and efficient to get that now we're building more software than ever before, right? So yes, we had an efficiency gain, and that efficiency gain immediately was eaten by just more consumption. This was true for cars as well. Every time we make cars more fuel efficient, people drive more. It's very simple. Yeah, I don't know how much you know about energy, so this graph is always like, if you don't know what terawatt hours are, it's a bit difficult. This is a graph from the German government trying to predict how much energy is going to go into these different areas of IT. And my only message here is, this is just going to go up. And yes, you could say like, oh, but is IT really such a big deal? There's some numbers that it's as big as the airline industry in terms of CO2. I'm not a big fan of these metrics. But think about it like this. Our aim now, from a society perspective, is to digitalize almost everything in our lives, even if we don't want to. If we assume right now that our degree of digitalization of life is about 5 to 10%, and we are already using a lot, I think this graph is probably grossly underestimating how much energy and resources will be needed to digitalize our society to an extent of 30 to 40%. So I think we're still at the very, very, very beginning of the digitalization of life and industries. This one should be an old hat, right? Like, this shouldn't be happening anymore. When I worked in tech, I'm getting older. It was really, we had a sentence in German, just throw more metal at it. And it was really, whenever we encountered a performance problem, we didn't look at the software, we just added more servers. And I hope that you don't do that anymore, but just a reminder that that shouldn't be the solution. Last one, then I tell you what to do. Don't worry. I'm German, I'm very bossy, so I will tell you what to do. The scale effect, I tried to mention this in the beginning with the car example. So there was this JavaScript library called leftpad, 3 lines of code, right? But almost every single Node.js package in the world was dependent on leftpad. So you could, of course, optimizing 3 lines of code is pretty hard. But with such a high degree of dependency, with so many other packages built on top of it, there's a tremendous scale effect, right? And this we have a lot with a lot of packages, a lot of libraries, a lot of software, is that we underestimate how many other people are building on top of it or how many people are using it. And 1% on one machine might sound small, but if you have scale effects of millions of users, then all of a sudden, even a tiny, tiny change makes a very large impact. Scale matters. What's expected of me, you? Like I said, I'll tell you what to do. But I'm not going to tell you how to build software. This is up to you. First one, don't argue with this. Software has side effects. Software has environmental impact. Yes, software can also make the world a better place to a certain extent, if you believe in that. But at the end of the day, it creates environmental impact. I just acknowledge it. Just say yes. Second, take responsibility. If you're building software and that software consumes resources, cloud, VMs, whatever, that's your responsibility. I'm sorry to say, but somebody's got to take accountability and responsibility for the resources consumed. Third one, the easy part, spread awareness. This presentation, everything I do is completely public, open source. You can steal it, copy it, whatever you want to do with it. Don't have to put my name on it. Just steal it and show it to your colleagues, show it to your organizations. Make them aware that if a product manager says, hey, can we have 400 more features, and those 400 more features need 1,000 more servers, that there is an awareness that that choice creates environmental impact. Just help them understand that. Transparency. At the moment, that's why I don't have slides with numbers on them, because I don't like the numbers. Most numbers in this conversation about the environmental impact of tech are based on mathematical guesstimates or just modeling, because nobody, no startup, no tech company actually releases like, hey, our web application consumes this much resources. Nobody makes that public. Try to ask people about how big is your AWS spend. Same thing. So if you can, do me a favor and encourage transparency so that we can have better data. So if you're working in a tech company or in a startup or in a big corporate, try to get some of this information public. How much environmental impact is in our stack? How many resources are we using? So that researchers can work with it, that people like me can use it. But we need more data, we need more facts. Good. So far, so clear. Good. I promise I will not tell you how to build software, but I am going to disassemble some myths for you real quick, just that you leave with something new in your mind. Did I get canceled? No, I didn't. Good. I'll go quick and I try to make you laugh again. It's the user's fault, right? I had this at a conference the other time. If people are uploading videos and images to Facebook, then it's the user who's at fault. Just don't upload anything. That's nice. You know where this comes from? BP. BP's, the oil company, invented this idea of an individual carbon footprint so that every single one of you can feel guilty for consuming gasoline. But remember, it's BP's fault. They're drilling it, they're taking it out, they're selling it. Don't get confused. It's not the user's fault. It's the people that make the products, it's the people that make the platforms that are responsible for the resource consumption created. It's about energy. This is especially the big tech companies want to talk about this because that's very easy to make green or make sustainable in marketing. It's not about just energy. Yes, a computer uses energy, but weigh it. A server weighs between 50 to 180 kilograms. That's 50 to 180 kilograms of rare earths, metals, compressed into a tiny format. This thing, iPhone, has more components than a car. It's just very, very small. And that process of making it small uses even more resources. Making something very tiny uses even more resources. So think about the servers, think about the computers, not just about the energy. Think about the materials that go in. This one also very good. If you ask Google, they finally took the claim down of the cloud website that they were carbon neutral since 2007. They kind of knew about climate before we knew about climate. And then they fixed it already back then and didn't tell us about it. And then 2020 comes, and then they're like, we did it already in 2007. So be very careful with these claims. The European Union is going to pass a law that makes sure that they cannot say this anymore. But what they're doing is they're monopolizing green energy. This graph shows you how much green energy they're buying in 2020. They're the largest purchasers of basically all the output that comes out of solar farms and wind farms. But they don't do that to be green. It's cheaper. Because they buy 20-year power contracts, and if you call Endesa here in Barcelona and you say, hey, I'm going to commit for 20 years to use a megawatt of power, they're going to be like, sure, you get a good discount because you're a loyal customer. No startup can match this because you need a lot of money to do this. And what they're doing is they're just monopolizing green electrons that we also need for green steel, we need it for hydrogen production, we need it for heating. We need these green electrons everywhere in our lives if we want to decarbonize. And at the moment, they're buying them away. This one. Good one, huh? It's a sentence that I've heard, like, everybody always like, but Max, we just moved to the cloud, everything's fine. No, it's not. There's no evidence, no research, no individually verified fact that this statement is true. Because all the data I would need to give you the truth, to say, okay, the utilization rate in the cloud is higher, they're using net less energy. We don't have any of that information. It's all secret. It's never been public. It's never been released. We cannot verify that this is actually true. So be careful with these statements. Last one, almost last one, then I'll be quiet. Do you have time? I think. Carbon. Green Software Foundation also talks about a lot about carbon. And my graph is not, that's better. It's the same with energy. A lot of people get very obsessed with converting energy into carbon. Why? Because you can buy certificates to then make the carbon magically disappear. We have carbon markets. The moment you add any other vector, for example, resources or pollution to this thinking of sustainability, all of a sudden you can't just buy certificates anymore. That's why everybody likes to talk about carbon. It's not just about carbon. Yes, we shouldn't emit more. It's the main cause of climate change, for sure. But there's other elements that we can think about that make this a bit more holistic in that sense. Yeah. Did I shame already enough, or should I do this again? Okay. All the reports that you get from the major cloud providers, take them with a grain of salt. It's a little bit like journalism. No clear sources, no public, no information on how they actually calculate it, no independent verification, no researcher was ever able to look at the underlying raw data. Just be careful and don't let them take you on this trip that somehow your infrastructure, which costs $1 million a year or something, has zero environmental impact. That is physically impossible. There is no zero carbon. That just doesn't exist. We can make it lower, but there is no zero. We will never get to zero. Okay, now I am going to tell you again what to do. After shocking you, no. I'm kind of done. Once again, I will just repeat things because I want you to take them home. Tell people about it, acknowledge it, take responsibility, make people aware that digital products have an environmental impact. Ask also all your suppliers, if you're using some SaaS solution like all the ones that are on stage today, just send them an email. Say, Max said I should ask you, what is the environmental impact of my usage? Could you please send me a report? They will get a panic attack and that will be great, but they will get you the data at some point. But it triggers everybody to think about it. Just all your SaaS tools that you're using, send them an email, say, look, I spent a lot of money on your tools, I would like an environmental impact report. Now a bit more practical. This I stole from a bank, and I like that bank because they built something internally that I think is really cool. They rate all their applications based on how much does this application really need to run. And based on that, they orchestrate the infrastructure in a different way. And you can see down here, like a transaction system, criticality 5 is always on. But there's also applications in their stack that are always off. And they only boot if there's somebody putting a request to an API or something, then this application actually starts up, and after 15 minutes, shuts down again. Yeah? It's a great paradigm to save a lot of resources and also money, of course, with this. Almost last one. Feature creep. Did you notice that every social media app that exists now is introducing messaging and introducing all the stuff that we already had in a different app? It's because they are competing on features. Zoom is an even better example. Zoom now has whiteboards, it has all this shit. That's not a video call. And that's not a good path to be on. If we're constantly building these super platforms, don't worry, it's not your fault, but it's just, we need to think about how do we differentiate through sustainability. Like my product is environmentally better, it performs better, it's better for people, it's better for the environment. And also demand governments to create a market for us so that we can compete not on features, but on the quality of our software. Because sustainability ultimately is a quality hallmark of a software product. Now I'm done. If you want more stuff on this, there's a lot of communities, including us, of course, but there's also Green Software Foundation, Green Web Foundation. We are friends with all of them. We're doing this all together. Yeah, there's a wiki that's work in progress if you want more, if you like to read. There will be a lot of standards on this, not the biggest fan. And if you really like Germans, of course, we already made a certification for this. So it's called the Blue Angel. We invented it first for toilet paper, but it also works for software. Don't worry. So check that out if you want. That's it. Am I allowed to take questions or something? Yes, I think so. No? Anybody, you can also shout at me, yeah, if I'm wrong. I don't mind. I shouted at you, now you get to shout at me.
Hello. Hey, Max. Thanks for the talk. I'm wondering, I mean, you are focusing us as software developers, but isn't it more efficient to make some money incentive to put into it, so really put up the CO2 price in the end, and then stuff like reducing lines of code and so on comes automatically because there's a money incentive. And I mean, that's like the big picture and not the small picture micromanaging it in every sector, area, and so on. Wouldn't that be a better approach, so to go at it politically?
Yes, a great question. So most of my days I spent in lobbying, so I completely agree with you. It's about, we can also change the market design. That's something that I'm actively working on. But let's be honest, most of the tech today comes not out of Europe. So to try to regulate something from Europe is a bit tricky sometimes. On your second point, yes, you can work with incentives and carbon pricing. But for that, for example, everybody here needs to already know what their carbon is. And right now, for example, software doesn't fall under carbon trading schemes, for example. You don't have to buy certificates to be able to make software that emits carbon. So right now, software is like this strange unicorn that also a lot of politicians think, oh, it's in the cloud and it's wireless. Therefore, it has no environmental impact. So first, this step has to happen. But for that, I need all of your help, because that's about making people aware that there is environmental impact in software. And that also has to come from you and me. Thanks. Any other questions? Or comments? Or insults? Or jokes? Jokes are good. Jokes are fun. No? Okay. If you want, you can find me here. If you have any questions, let me know.